Hi, I'm Dan White, UAF Chancellor. In November 2018, we launched a strategic planning effort for 2025. Our process was organized around 6 goals, focused on who we are and what we aspire to be. These goals included modernizing the student experience, solidifying our global leadership in Alaska Native and Indigenous programs, achieving Tier 1 research status, transforming UAF's IP development and commercialization enterprise, embracing and growing a culture of respect, diversity, inclusion, and caring, and revitalizing key academic programs. For each of these goals, a committee was made up of students, faculty, and staff. And throughout the 2018 to 2019 academic year, these committees met, they gathered input, and they drafted reports. Those reports answered 3 critical questions. Who do we want to become? Who are we now? And how do we get from who we are now to who we want to be? Final reports of the planning committees were published in 2019, back in July. The rollout of the plan had to be put on hold due to organizational uncertainty in the UA system. But the committees were reconvened in the summer of 2020, and the committee chairs were charged with the next steps in the process. This included a presentation on the committee's goal, a 2-page overview, and a 2-minute video. I want to thank the committee chairs for their leadership, all of the committee members for their hard work, and to everyone who contributed input or feedback throughout this process. Between now and the end of the academic year, we seek your input so that these plans can be finalized and published as UAF's Strategic Plan 2025. Thanks for choosing UAF.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the forum for the strategic goal relating to achieving Tier 1 research status. I'm Doni Bretthart. I'm a faculty member in the Department of Biology and Wildlife and an Arctic researcher, and I also help to run the Two Oak Field Station. And I will be making this presentation along with Hayo Aiken. So I'll do my bit, and then he'll introduce himself shortly. So first, I wanted to just mention our team members. And particularly, I want to highlight the role of Taryn Lopez, who is our chair. She did a tremendous amount of work on the project, drafting the report. We were also joined by Samantha Alshire, myself, Marcia Casino, Hayo, Audrey Kirby, Cecile Larden, James McLean, Link Olson, Lori Rhea, Arlie Reynolds, Matthew Sturm, Jason Theus, and Michael West. So before we get into the details, what is Tier 1 research status? What does it mean? So it's the colloquial term for universities with a very high research activity as defined by the Carnegie classification, the highest level that they have. And Tier 2 is the colloquial term for universities with high research activity, R2 status as defined by the Carnegie classification. UAF is currently in Tier 2. And the question that was facing us is how might we get to Tier 1? So why should we try to do this at all? Well, first of all, UAF is the only university in Alaska that draws researchers from around the country and the world. People come to UAF for research products and education and the research experience, and we are a global leader in Arctic research. Research continues to offer us the ability to set ourselves apart through our excellence, to grow opportunities and solve problems that others cannot. So it makes sense that we should be Tier 1, in a sense. We should be recognized. And it will give us a way of promoting ourselves into the future. And being in Tier 1 would help us, first of all, because Tier 1 status comes with a different mindset, both within the universities and in funding agencies. And really, it's a sort of a truism that success leads to more success, but I think it would in this case. It will help us attract globally competitive faculty, staff, and students. And it's probably essential for us to be able to pull in larger grants. It also enables us to grow our research capacity and foster economic development. And the Tier 1 emphasis on the importance of graduate students and undergraduate research will continue to enhance our research reach and impact.
Hi, I'm Hayo Aiken. I'm director of the International Arctic Research Center at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and I'm one of the members of the Strategic Planning Committee, Group Number 2, How to Attain Research Tier 1 Status. So I want to share with you now a bit of the background on what the committee was able to learn about the current status of UAF in the Tier 1, Tier 2 classification system that was set up by the Carnegie Institute. So where are we now? This plot here was generated based on the classification data for 2015. You see here shown in different colors the different tiers of research activity at different universities. On the top right, you see universities with very high research activity. This is about over 130 universities in the country that meet that criterion. And then in the center and going down to the lower left, you have universities with high research activity, so-called Tier 2 university. And you see UAF sitting in there, right, with a big green cross. And then down in the lower left bottom corner, you have doctoral universities. And what's unique and interesting about our position, as you'll see here in a bit more detail shortly, is that UAF is already in a category that comes very close to pushing us over into Tier 1. The metrics that are shown here in this graphic on the bottom axis are aggregate components that are measures of our total performance. And you see the per capita component that is aggregated, but also measured in terms of per capita faculty members on the left-hand side. You see that we're doing extremely well in the per capita component, but where we may have to expend a bit more effort is to move us over towards the right in terms of our overall size, and in particular, some of our graduate student measures. So if you look at these numbers in more detail, you'll see a few plots here generated by the committee. On the left here, the blue column represents the total median research and development expenditures. This is mostly from outside grant funding at the Tier 1, very high research activity universities. In the middle, the red column is the corresponding median value of research expenditures at Tier 2 universities. That's the category we're currently sitting in. And then you'll see that UAF is, in fact, already more than halfway up at the level of Tier 1 universities in terms of our total research expenditures. If you look at this in terms of per capita, you'll see that UAF faculty are extremely productive, something that we were always loosely aware of, but looking at the numbers now, it's both impressive and something to be proud of. You see that on the right-hand side here, UAF per capita, that is per number of faculty, our research expenditures, median numbers here of over $500,000 per year are well above more than twice of what the Tier 1, the very high research activity category, is characterized by. And we're almost an order of magnitude larger than what is being done in terms of per capita research expenditures at the level of Tier 2 universities, which we're currently part of. The area where there's significant room for improvement concerns the number of doctorate degrees that we award at UAF. If you look on the left here, you see in blue, Tier 1, very high research activity universities, well over 150 doctoral degrees awarded per year. UAF is just under 40, only somewhat higher than our peers in the Tier 2 category. And this picture is even more pronounced if we look at the number of social science doctorates. The previous slide showed you doctorates in the STEM field, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Here, if you look at the number of social science doctorates, we're at roughly half a dozen doctorate degrees or PhDs awarded every year. Tier 1 universities are up there at about 37 as the median number. So the other interesting aspect of the committee's work, led by Taryn Lopez, was to look at the Tier 1 universities that are comparable to us in size. Most of the Tier 1 universities are very large with well above 10,000 students, but there's about 9 that are of similar size as we are, and it's useful to consider how we compare to these schools. And in that context, UAF, compared to our 9 peers or aspirational peers who are currently sitting in the very high research activity category, UAF has the lowest enrollment of graduate students. We have the second lowest tuition rate, and we have the largest proportion of in-state students. None of these are value judgments, but they give us an idea both of existing strengths and where we might want to move. The other aspects of the comparison are that UAF, compared to these other 9 universities that are already in the highest tier, very high research activity, UAF has the largest proportion of revenue from government grants and contracts. We have the second highest percent of expenditures on research, but at the same time, we have the lowest expenditures on education, and a lower percent of revenue at UAF comes from endowments, private gifts, and contracts, compared in particular to private universities that are part of the Tier 1 group. So in summary, where are we now? We have a strong or very strong research emphasis. We're very competitive in terms of research funding. Our STEM research expenditures are on par or even higher than Tier 1 universities. Certainly, if we look at per capita measures, research expenditures currently are about a third of UAF's budget. We draw researchers from around the world to be part of this exciting research enterprise that's underway here at the university. We have strong research support for undergraduate students through the BLAST and URSA programs, and we are a Land Sea Space Grant institution and a minority serving institution that really distinguishes us from some of our aspirational peers as well. So all of these strengths position us well to move towards Tier 1.
So now let's do a little bit of analysis of how we might get to Tier 1 from where we are now. So we explored a variety of potential changes in metrics that would move us into Tier 1 using an online tool that's based on the 2015 Carnegie classification. We felt really fortunate. Taryn discovered this online, and it's a great tool, but it's important to keep in mind that especially the magnitude of the changes might not apply exactly to future classifications, because the classification is relative to all the other universities that are in Tier 1 and Tier 2, and the rules can change from one classification to the next. But one thing that was really clear from our explorations with this tool is that increasing graduate enrollment and success is the key element of all of the most direct strategies. So we checked a lot of other things like changing the number of research staff members, changing the number of faculty. Nothing had the impact that changing the number of graduate students does. So from this analysis, it was suggested that there were 2 sort of viable, might call quick ways of getting to Tier 1. One would be just to maintain our current strengths in STEM research, but then quadruple the number of PhDs that are awarded in STEM, humanities, social sciences, and other professional fields, maybe double the non-STEM research expenditures and double research staff. Option 2 was to maintain our STEM expenditures and just increase the PhDs in all fields by 5 times. That might sound like a really big lift, but keep in mind that our number of PhD students that are currently in the social sciences and the humanities is very low, so changing them by a factor of 5 wouldn't necessarily be that difficult. Increasing research expenditures, on the other hand, just bringing in more money compared to what we already bring in, or increasing scientific staff doesn't have nearly as strong an effect as increasing graduate enrollment. And interestingly, increasing instructional faculty numbers by themselves doesn't have a strong effect. But the committee felt very strongly that this would indirectly advance our status, because if you have more faculty, then those faculty will have more time to mentor graduate students and to conduct research. As an aspirational goal, increasing graduate student numbers to be in line with our aspirational peers will benefit both university research and the state of Alaska. And we think, as we'll talk about in recommendations here, that one way to do this would be to focus on cross-disciplinary problem-solving research and actionable science that builds on the current strength and our setting in Alaska, where climate change is very rapid. And this might also help us develop new funding sources that align with UAF's strengths.
So let's look at some of the recommendations that come from the committee. I'll review the first half of the core recommendations, and then Donnie is going to cover the other half. The first recommendation is more an internal action that we can take, and that is to make sure that the university actually tracks and evaluates Tier 1 appropriate metrics that would allow us to assess where we are in our trajectory towards attaining Tier 1 status. Right now, we are not tracking these metrics consistently, and in fact, some of the parameters that the Carnegie institution itself is tracking are not entirely consistent in of themselves, but some of them could be very easily tracked through slight modifications in our internal tracking mechanisms, such as the UAF non-faculty research staff. And doing that, being more aware of how our various metrics impact our status is not just relevant and beneficial from the perspective of attaining Tier 1, but it also has positive outcomes in other contexts that relate to funding support for the university. Recommendation number 2 is related to the point that Doni already made, a clear recognition that strengthening social sciences, non-STEM research, indigenous studies, the humanities, and the arts is an important aspect of attaining Tier 1. And we feel, as a committee, that incentivizing the development of multidisciplinary research themes and networks will help us meet that goal. These coordinated initiatives are going to be also very helpful in attracting larger scale funding to the university, but at the same time, they allow us to draw talent from across UAF's current very competent pool of faculty, research staff, and students. And finally, we feel that these types of multidisciplinary research collaborations are most successful if they're initiated and led by passionate investigators in a bottom-up way, but with strong incentives and coordination support from the university administration, such as through the Vice Chancellor for Research Office, the Graduate School, or URSA. And there's already examples such as the EPSCOR program that illustrates how to do this. Recommendation number 3 is to strengthen and expand existing PhD programs and grow new ones. As Doni already explained, increasing the number of PhDs in the non-STEM fields will have a significant impact. So creating new programs to allow for that will be critical, but also increasing the number of students in STEM fields where, again, we're well below our aspirational peers in terms of number of PhDs awarded per year. So PhD programs clearly essential to attaining Tier 1, but these programs then in turn may not necessarily pay for themselves in terms of tuition revenue, but the committee looked at this from a more holistic perspective and sees tangible benefits that cut across a range of sectors in the university, including increases in research revenue well in excess of the original investment made to ramp up PhD numbers. Graduate student and graduate program support is essential to research. It's ultimately the PhD students who are expanding our knowledge, who are key drivers of innovation, and who are also essential in allowing faculty members and these larger collaborative programs to actually obtain grant funding. Well, how do we see potential increases in PhD student numbers play out? One recommendation is to provide competitive PhD fellowships for UAF graduate students. A key challenge that has been identified by faculty across the university is the responsibility that comes with taking on a PhD student that extends over several years, typically 5 to 6 years, and ensuring funding support for PhD students is a key responsibility and a potential challenge for faculty members. So identifying support mechanisms that lower the entry barrier, that make it easier for PhD students to come into the university and then partner with faculty members over the course of their studies and bringing in additional funding is seen by the committee as a very effective mechanism to increase PhD student numbers. How would we support such a program? In part, of course, through a classic approach of increasing teaching assistantships or TAs. That will have other benefits as well and may benefit integration of research or integration of undergraduate students into research. Targeted giving campaigns from external private donors, as well as drawing on research revenue, such as the URSA model, are potential ways forward. And we'd just like to note that the Vice Chancellor for Research, Nettie de Belhamer, has already gone down that path by implementing a competitive PhD fellowship support model that is underway now.
So we also thought that in addition to directly helping to support PhD students, it would be really important to provide incentives and opportunities for all faculty to mentor graduate students and to conduct research. At the present time, research mentorship isn't currently prioritized in faculty workloads, and it's inconsistently emphasized in the faculty review processes across units. So some units prize it very highly and others really don't. Incentives could include things other than money, too, such as merit-based award systems, flexible workloads, in addition to financial support for graduate students, tiered mentorship support, and longer job security for non-tenure track faculty. One thing to point out here is that we are not suggesting that the university support all PhD students continuously throughout their entire program, but instead we're saying providing a little bit of a boost in terms of a competitive program might help you get to a point where the faculty members can more easily support them, and having TAs near the end of their program might help them finish. We also wanted to mention, the committee decided to bring out and highlight that the joint appointment of faculty between research institutes and colleges is a really effective mechanism that enables faculty to conduct research because it's part of their workload, while reinvesting some of the overhead into the generating unit supports further research success. So it might be a really good idea to expand this model across other colleges, particularly into the social sciences and humanities where it doesn't currently exist. Another key factor is obviously going to be recruiting and retaining excellent faculty. Even though instructional faculty, the numbers by themselves don't directly get us to Tier 1, faculty are actually critical to advance the metrics that are necessary to get to Tier 1. And we know, as Hayo mentioned, that the UAF faculty are exceptionally productive. But faculty numbers are declining now due to recent budget cuts, and some very productive faculty are leaving for more stable positions elsewhere. So new initiatives to recruit and retain excellent faculty, including filling vacancies and providing new positions, will be critical to obtaining Tier 1 status. The committee also noted that addressing inequity, expanding childcare options, spousal hire programs, and providing more remote work options would also be things that might help retain excellent faculty and keep them from going elsewhere. In addition, we thought it would be very important to incentivize and nurture the recruitment of postdoctoral fellows and research staff. There are a variety of reasons for this. First of all, increasing research staff with doctoral degrees is one of the metrics that would help advance us to Tier 1. Also, postdocs and research staff provide a pool of potential faculty to advance UAF research. Finally, competitive postdoctoral fellowship programs such as UAF Centennial Program that operated for a number of years would help attract competitive postdocs who then might choose to stay. And finally, we thought it was also important to recognize faculty for supporting research staff and postdoctoral fellows in some way. We also thought that in general, and in keeping with the strategic goals of a number of the other groups, that increasing diversity and equity across campus will foster innovation and will achieve a welcoming campus environment, which is a very important factor that plays into how people feel about being at UAF and staying at UAF. So we thought it's important to create mechanisms to facilitate the hiring of diverse faculty, staff, and graduate students. We urge the university to increase the hiring of Alaska Native faculty and staff and recruiting Native Alaska graduate students. And we also thought that it might help to have cross-campus initiatives that would help recruit and engage students in research from the beginning of their education, from high school up to graduate school. For example, the Rural Alaska Honors Institute has been quite successful in introducing students from the bush into research at the UAF. So sort of beyond Tier 1, our vision includes more than just that. Our group, we felt that we do want to get to be Tier 1, a Tier 1 university recognized for very high research activity. Also, importantly, a university that conducts high quality and high impact research that benefits Alaska, the nation, and the world. We want to retain our leadership in circumpolar North and Indigenous research. We want to be a place where all employees and students feel valued and secure, and where collegiality and collaboration drive research. Finally, we want to be a place where research, education, and service are fully integrated and everyone can conduct research, because that's the basis of new knowledge and really the search for the truth. So in conclusion, we feel that attaining Tier 1 research status is ambitious, and it will require a long-term commitment by the university to fully realize. But we recognize that UAF excels relative to our peers in bringing in competitive external research funds, and for our size, we are doing exceptionally well. we can really be proud of that. We are hampered by low tuition revenue and low graduate enrollment, and we recognize that increasing graduate student enrollment and research activity will require more faculty and flexible workloads for faculty that prioritize research. Striving toward Tier 1 will advance UAF's research capability and productivity, and integrating research and teaching will improve the overall quality of UAF education by bringing students closer to the boundaries of where knowledge is being discovered. So at this point, we'd like to move to questions. And of course, since this is a virtual forum, we can't ask you for questions in person, but we have received a few questions that we'd like to try to address. And I think I'll take the first one and then turn it over to Hayo. And that main question that we've been asked by several people is this even feasible? It seems like such a big lift, especially if we're talking about increasing graduate students by such a large fraction. But we think that it actually is feasible for a variety of reasons. First of all, in the current administration, there are probably going to be a lot more opportunities for getting research funds. And if we can boost ourselves up a bit, we'll have really great access to them. And what our analysis of the peers, our aspirational peers, has shown that small universities can be successful in achieving R1 status, especially those that have prioritized support for graduate students, especially STEM graduate students. So we really feel that one of the key messages of this analysis is the importance of supporting graduate students and making it easier for us to recruit great graduate students to UAF. Okay. And so finally, I guess we would also just like to say that, it might seem like a big lift in our current budget climate, but on the other hand, even as the state support has been dropping, support for research has been rising due to the fabulous efforts of faculty to attract outside dollars. And although certainly there's a point where this might become more difficult, I think we're in a good position actually to move forward and do this. So we feel like it will require dedicated commitment from the central administration, but it's not out of the question. All right, I'll turn this over to Hayo to answer some more questions.
I'd just like to build a bit more on this question of is this a realistic goal? And just wanted to point out that the committee as a whole sees near-term benefits on the path to attaining Tier 1 very high research activity status that will benefit us right from the start. And that is the important connection between supporting research, building research infrastructure, and generating outcomes that matter to Alaskans in the state in terms of actionable science, but also, importantly, increasing graduate student numbers will make us stronger as a leader in linking research to undergraduate and graduate education. Graduate students play an important role both as TAs, but also as mentors and as generators of new knowledge in terms of advancing opportunities for undergraduate students as well. And we feel that this particular strategy of increasing graduate student numbers, and not just in the STEM fields, but also in other fields, is an important mechanism in that regard. The other question that has come up in this context is how we see some of the research infrastructure be continued to be supported. For example, the Advanced Instrumentation Lab, that's a cross-campus laboratory, was given as an example. There's others as well. And we feel that attaining Research 1 status may lead to more support both directly through the university administration, recognizing the importance of such research infrastructure, of such core laboratories, but at the same time, that advancing research, increasing research revenue, and stronger partnerships will also enable us to support more of these functions through outside funding support. The final question that came up indirectly that I just wanted to briefly address before I hand it back to Doni is this question of research support across different disciplines. The committee highlighted the importance of multidisciplinary research networks and research collaborations, increasing the research activities in the non-STEM fields, social sciences, indigenous studies, arts and humanities is absolutely critical. But those types of partnerships will also benefit us already in the near term through research outcomes that are difficult to achieve otherwise, in particular in locations such as Alaska, where we see rapid change, not just of the environment, but of the broader socioeconomic setting, as well as the geopolitical and large-scale economic environment.
Thank you, Hayo. Yeah, and I just want to echo what Hayo said about the fact that even if we don't necessarily get to Tier 1 immediately, the things that would advance us to get toward Tier 1 will help the university for sure. And I think in that sense, that's very worthwhile, even if we don't actually get there in the next 5 years. But hopefully we can. I wanted to mention just one more question that was raised, and that was about the role of the libraries in a Tier 1 university. Deciding the fate of the libraries is kind of beyond my and Hayo's pay grade. But clearly, in order to be successful in research, you need to have good access to the most recent literature. And so we do feel that libraries are important. And finally, I think, so we didn't receive a lot more other questions, but I want to just encourage everyone, you will have an opportunity to submit questions. And one of the goals of submitting questions is to help all the teams figure out if there's important issues that were overlooked or that need to be highlighted so that the plans can be sort of finalized and so that Chancellor White can move ahead with implementing the strategic plan in the next 5 years. So please do put your comments in, do provide them. And thank you so much for listening to this presentation and for your interest in our strategic goal of achieving Tier 1 research. Thank you.